Yeah, let's just fire away on this bitch.
Yeah, dude, let's just go.
Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubs at the Club, brought to you tonight by Snake River Stampede Whiskey. This is an actual instant reaction happening just minutes after Idaho's 35-32 victory over the number 21 Northern Arizona Astrojacks. We are the Idaho Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alice Hammer, joined today by Brave Bold Brian Marceau.
Happy Halloween, dudes, and it finally happened on this show. Idaho off the Jacks.
Oh, man, Jacks off, boys. Coming to us live from Moscow, the man of the hour. It's producer redacted, the brick wall himself, Martin Heemstra. Martin, how's it going, man? I know this is way past your bedtime.
I am an old man I'm way past my bedtime. I am some geriatric fuck now. I am really tired, but my adrenaline is still going from this thrilling overtime victory and the Halloween party with the sorority that happens to be right next door to me right now. So it's going good right now.
Man, I tweeted it. That was the most whelming game I have ever seen the Vandals play. Idaho did not start particularly well. Punt return touchdown for Northern Arizona, which I think you can call it a punt return because the ball was never kicked. It was picked up between the drop from the hands to the punt foot. Then Idaho rattles off 26 straight points, which NAU answers within 22 unanswered. Idaho ends up getting down, kicking a field goal to send it to overtime before Eli Cummings, the man of the night, finally got the ball into the end zone, 35-32. That was the most abbreviated recap I could possibly give. Martin, I want your immediate thoughts. What the fuck did we just watch?
We watched a victory, and I am very excited about that. To put it literally, there it was. I literal diamond cutters there. I was making Dallas find. I was making diamonds at the end of that game. Let's just say.
Yeah, dude. I know Dallas. You called that whelming. I thought that game was so goddamn wild to me because no, you're right. Like Idaho started off not super hot, but hey, if you listened to the Tubs at the Club preview, someone on here time after time kept saying, "Yeah, NAU's okay, guys. They're okay. That's it. They're definitively okay." I started to feel pretty goddamn good about Idaho. For a good stretch, I feel in the first half, second quarter, really, Dallas. Obviously getting a defensive touchdown helps a ton. But I thought there was a run where there was a pretty good pass rush mix for Idaho, as in, mixing things up offensively and making sure, to get the ball into the hands of the guys who were making plays, which was Eli Cummings on the ground and through the air. And Joshua Wood was pretty solid in the first half. And then, Jesus, this is the nature of being a 500-ish level team too, Dallas, which is when things are going well, they're going well. But when that bottom drops out, God damn it, everything drops out at once. So, no, I was riding that roller coaster of like I was talking to Colin Hughes during halftime, and I'm running to the grocery store to grab milk, about how good this is feeling. It feels like, hey, the corner's been turned. Immediately in the second half, NAU shows up and chips away. Idaho starts to do some of the Idaho things we've been frustrated about. But hey, the big deal, a win is a win. An ugly win, it's still a W. And teams that are turning the corner, teams that are good, sometimes they got to win ugly. This Idaho team, half one of the season, was not winning those close, ugly games. So we have a lot of more specifics to go through, Dallas, obviously. But no, my immediate reaction to this game was, this is the roller coaster of a 500 team. Don't talk yourself above that, but don't talk yourself below that either. This is a team that they do some things well. They're not going to 100% put together the entire season. Just fucking buckle up.
Yeah, Peter Soeth in the comment section. The team was resilient and got the job done. It is growing and getting better. Guys, there are 50 live viewers right now. If you are a Vandal listening to this in the past, I highly encourage you to jump onto our YouTube and watch, because the comment section is absolutely just exploding right now. A lot of really good points being made that we're just not going to be able to get to because we don't have that kind of time. But Peter's comment is kind of where I'm trying to focus myself. This is a road game, a night game, an ESPN game, and a ranked
Dallas,
game.
you famously have a shit ton of night game PTSD too.
Yes, extremely. For good reason, I would say, because Idaho at one point looked like they should have won this game by 45 to 50 points. And honestly, if our offensive coordinator was a little bit more sound and seasoned, I feel like that probably would have happened. For every positive we can take away from this, there's also all of the negatives of what the fuck did Idaho do the entirety of the second half before miraculously tripping over their dicks to the field goal that, man, props to Owen Adams hitting the biggest kick of his life there. And then they call the timeout right before he kicks it, and then he has to kick it again, still nails it, sends the game to overtime. Man, I'm very encouraged, because this is definitely not a game that Idaho would have won even 3 weeks ago, much less at the beginning of the season when everyone was healthy. I don't think this was the type of thing they were able to pull off. But man, there are some serious cracks in this team and in this coaching staff. Look, NAU was just okay, and I'm okay that Idaho beat a just okay ranked team on the road. But man, there's definitely some patchwork shit here. Things have got to be cleaned up, but this is definitely one of those things that, hey, you win or lose the game at the end of the day. You won the game, you throw out most of what you did in the second half, and you just move forward from there.
But before we talk about specifics about what went well, what did not go well, Dallas, I mean, spoiler alert, I already talked about Colin, earlier in the show. The people are waiting.
If you are looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, don't look past your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions has been Vandal owned and operated since 1976 and they're ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the middle fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or even the Selway. And you can check out special trips like one to see the Perseid meteor shower. Camp on pristine beaches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, and fish the most remote stretches of river in the entire United States. Just bring your clothes, and Colin and HRE are going to handle everything else for you. Grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now at 406-540-4450 or check them out at hughesriver.com. Martin, what there's obviously so many ways we can take this, but what went well tonight for the Vandals?
I want to I don't know what to pick. I'm just gonna say resiliency. Just because, like, yes, they gave up the lead, and most people, when that happened, like, I'm Brian, I know you're making that face, but
No, that's
like,
I'm making my face about
yeah.
something else. That you're making a good point. Please don't let me interrupt you.
Yeah, but like, I've seriously, like, that's kind of like, that's like, I know it's gonna sound kind of basic for me to say that. Like, could I have picked the offensive line for getting over 180 yards rushing? Yeah. Receiving, no, 200 yards rushing? Yeah, but I'm not going to. But like, resiliency, just because when they gave up that huge lead, yeah, most teams probably would have shut down, but they didn't. And yes, this team's young and everything, but they still showed that, hey, we're gonna fucking fight. And I'll also give credit to Coach Ford for still giving faith to his field goal kickers at the end of the end of regulation time to still kick the field goal instead of going for the win. Before you two say anything, I do want to shout out Brian for getting to pick them off by 1 point. He picked Idaho 35-31, and the final score is 35-32.
Brian, I think that counts as Price is Right rules. You did not go over, so you win the congratulatory hand job or whatever.
I will make sure to deliver on that later.
Before we get to your what went well, Brian, I want to hit the comment section. Madison McCord, Linehan waking up from his second half nap in the last 4 minutes was clutch. Yeah, we're going to get to that in the what didn't go well. We're certainly going to touch on that. But Brian, for you, what went well tonight?
Okay, on the offensive side of the ball, because there's a couple things that I think there's a lot that went well on both sides, just like there's a lot to talk about in the second half on both sides. And I wanted to co-sign Martin's point. A win is a win. And this is, like you said earlier, Dallas, this is a game Idaho would not have won in September. So look, you can be touchy about how things go in the process. If you're in our hashtag only Tubs Discord, patreon.com/Tubs the club. That was wire to wire, wild, wire to wire, up and down. But when it's all said and done, they did enough to pick up the win. That was a big deal. Offensively, Eli Cummings looked like a first-team All-Big Sky level running back today. 12 carries for 106 yards and a touchdown, 5 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown on 6 total targets. I wish the dude had more than 17 touches when he's that productive. But that was easily the best Eli Cummings has looked the entire season, not remotely close. And in the first half, big bifurcation here. In the first half, I thought Joshua Wood looked pretty solid. So long as, like, over the shoulder passes were not what he was asked to do in the first half. He didn't make any mistakes. He moved the ball well enough. I really thought in the first half, Idaho did a pretty damn good job of mixing in the pass and rush. I thought for most of the half, the play calling overall, it took a couple drives to settle down, but after those couple drives, I felt like Idaho offensively was doing what I thought they've needed to do all season, which is, hey, just more worry about getting points on the board. And how do you get points on the board? Just do what's working. The answer is not going to be the same once you get through those first 2 scripted drives every single week. And I thought in the second quarter in particular, Idaho was delivering on both of those on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go with the defense. I thought the defense played really well tonight for the most part. They obviously began to struggle a little bit towards the end of the third and throughout really the entire fourth quarter. I would put that on Matt Linehan. I would not necessarily put that on the defense or Cord Dennison. Idaho, again, we'll get into the specifics why. Idaho, as you said, Brian, the offense looked pretty good. The running game was working really well, and Eli Cummings should have had double the touches he had. But in our Discord, Idaho starts off with a 3-man front, and NAU starts moving the ball pretty well. All of us essentially just exploded in the game thread in our Discord, and all started calling for Dennison's head, which is something that tends to happen frequently and fastly in the game thread. And then all of a sudden, NAU misses that field goal, and Idaho holds them scoreless until 5 minutes left of the third. Obviously, the punt return was a touchdown, but the defense themselves held NAU scoreless for 2.5 quarters of this game. This being with the 3 down linemen, as Madison McCord says, best effort out of the putrid 3-man rush we've seen. Guys are winning more one-on-one battles than we've seen all season. We had so many comments about that in the game thread tonight. The 3-man front is just, it is not great. I don't know if this is because of how Dennison wants to run the defense. I don't know if it's just a lack of depth on the defensive line. But the 3-man defensive front has historically not been working. You've seen it pretty much every game this season. But, man, the defense did its job long enough. And, yeah, again, it didn't get a whole lot of help from the offense towards the end there. But did the job well enough across those first 2.5 quarters to keep NAU off of the scoreboard offensively, which ultimately is the reason they won the game.
Well, I'd say in the first 2.5 quarters, the defense didn't do well enough. They did great the first 2.5 quarters because, I mean, NAU did not score an offensive touchdown the first 2.5 quarters. It is hard to do better defensively than that. However, like Dallas, we know this Idaho team is not going to be like a top 10 defensive team. They're going to have their lapses. That's going to happen. The big deal is, do they get enough stops, or can they have at least sustained runs of giving the offense, some margin for error, just like the offense needs to give defense margin for error. And a couple things I want to point out.
I want to pause you very quickly, Brian. Tom Kendall in the comment section, defensive touchdown was pretty good. Completely forgot to mention that the defense scored a touchdown for Idaho 6 minutes into the third quarter.
Yep, Cruz Hepburn. So I guess the other thing I want to point out here is, one, we covered on the pregame, NAU's offensive line sucks. And I thought that wasn't really going to matter because Idaho's been terrible about getting the quarterback. This was easily the best Idaho's been at getting to the quarterback, not counting top 5 Portland State. Idaho had 8 TFLs today, which felt, I didn't check every game, but easily that felt like the best day for Idaho getting pressure on the quarterback. Now that happened both in the first half, and also, to be fair, there were some timely plays in OT and in the fourth quarter where Idaho's defensively did come up with some plays. I mean, we obviously have a lapse we'll talk about in the second half of the show, but that as a whole was easily the best defensive effort I think we've seen from Idaho for quite a while. Maybe not on the season, because there's some good, like WSU is a good defensive effort. We know that. But we also know we're kind of far away from that. So let's say in a game that feels like it mattered, in a game that feels like there was actual talent Idaho was going against, this very, 2.5 out of 4 quarters, Idaho defensively showed up exactly as well as they needed to.
We've kind of danced around it a little bit. Martin, what did not go well for the Vandals tonight?
I'm going to take the obvious and go special teams, just because there was the blocked PAT, right? Or is it a field goal? PAT. Blocked PAT and the blocked punt. And it just seems like that's been a revolving an issue. And it's you saw them communicating about it, and it just, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, fuck, something's bad's going to happen. It's granted, one of those was, yes, as Nick Weber saying, special teams was ... special. I wouldn't say that, crewhead, but that's maybe just have someone else do it instead. But man, that's what didn't go well.
Mercifully, NAU helped out by being pretty bad on special teams too.
Yes.
So hey, what did not go well? Okay, so Dallas, everything good I said offensively about Idaho, throw it out the window for a lot of the second half. Eli Cummings, hey, I'm the president of I want the offense to be more Joshua Wood centric fan club, and I will not leave that fan club. But Wood in the second half had probably his worst half of football as a Vandal. Threw a pick in the red zone. Also, I mean, both Wood and the wideouts today, they took turns letting each other down in the second half. Wood overshot a few open guys for sure that would have been big, but Wood was the victim of at least 3 or 4 huge drops on passes that bounced off hands and shoulders where, if you replay this game and either the drops aren't there or Wood doesn't overshoot a few guys, it's a very different second half. But that was happening, and it kept happening for consecutive drives. And Eli Cummings, who had been electric, just sat on the shelf until the final 2 minutes of the game, which, hey, Eli, it is tough to be able to have to sit that long and then deliver in the biggest moment of the game. So hey, all the credit in the world to Eli, and glad the coaching staff eventually figured out what everyone watching is wondering, like, why aren't we doing this? But it was an intersection of offensively. It seems like Idaho still play calling wise, like they struggle with writing what works as the game is going. They struggle with adjusting to what is working in game. And sometimes what it feels like is you'll go either to, it feels like they just completely have shut out the passing game to like, well, now they've completely shut out the running game, and the offense stalled out for, in different ways for a second half. Again, they got the win. They did what they needed to at the end. But this is also a game NAU is going to say if we're talking the NAU end, NAU would also say, yeah, we had some big passes bounce off hands, guys. That would have changed this game. So Idaho did get some help from NAU, just like Idaho gave NAU some help. But keeping that in mind, this shouldn't have been an OT game. This is a game Idaho should have won by probably 2 scores. But adjustment-wise, NAU changed things up, and Idaho changed things up in like the inverse sense.
Yeah, for me, the offensive play calling is a disaster, and I think there has to be a change. No matter how this season ends, I think there has to be a change. Hey, Matt and Scott shaking hands about being legendary Vandals that came back around to skullfuck a team I loved as a coach. But man, Idaho in the first half, 19 rushes for 126 yards, 13 passes, 97 yards, and Woods 2 touchdowns. Third quarter rolls around, Idaho 6 passes, 7 carries. So those 7 carries were for 42 fucking yards, 4 carries on the first drive, and then virtually nothing until the final 2 drives of the game. Completely went away from the run, completely went away from what Idaho has made very, 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 very obvious is the game plan of this team is to run the fucking football. And they just stopped, just completely just went away from it. And that is what ultimately allowed NAU to get back in the game. Now, devil's advocate, you could say Idaho not wasting all that clock in the third and fourth quarter is what gave them the time at the end to get down and kick a field goal. But man, I wonder how much differently this game would have gone had Idaho looked at what was going well in the first half, which was Nate Thomas and Eli Cummings are both averaging over 5 yards a carry. Maybe we just keep giving those guys the football. Maybe it's a little bit different story. And that's been the story of this season to me, guys, is it seems like there's not been any point where all phases of the game are put together and operating correctly. Some of them, I would say special teams has not really had a day where they're doing particularly well. Really missed really missed Xander Eccles tonight. A couple snaps that were, not up to their normal par, but I am very concerned about this team moving forward when you see what happened in the third quarter and most of the fourth, where the offensive identity just felt like throwing shit at a wall to see what was going to happen without any sort of understanding of what had been working throughout the game.
Now, the one pushback I'll give you is Idaho was effective passing the ball in the first half, but it was also around a 50. It was not precisely 50-50, but it was close to a 50-50 or like a 55-45 split. Something like that is what I'd say. And in the second half, the problem wasn't just that Eli wasn't getting the ball. That was a big deal. But the problem was it felt like, I don't have the play numbers in front of me. It felt like it shifted to like 80% pass, 20% rush. And like that's too far. Even if you think Joshua Wood is good, which I do generally, he had a bad second half. And even if Joshua Wood is not having a bad second half like he did, no one is thinking Wood needs to throw the ball 50 times a game. He has not shown that to be the relative strength. But I think I do want to reference about that like ratio, not a precise number. So this is going to be deceiving if you simply read the numbers. Wood finished 15-31 on the game. By the way, he had a stretch in the second half where he went 3-13. I think they said he was 10-14 in the first half. So he was fine in the first half, but then it was rough second half. So that's 31 total passes. Now you might say, well, Marceau, they rushed it 36 times. Like, what are you bitching about? That's rushing more than they passed. Well, like 9 of those were Joshua Wood rushes. Maybe 1 or 2 of those were designed Wood rushes. So it's actually closer to 30-ish rushes to 40-ish passes. And then further, that skewed significantly further to the pass for like a long stretch, which is to say, I mean, Idaho started relying on something that was not working in the second half. And truly, it was just the entire pass game for most of the second half was misfiring. There was a couple, and it wasn't even like fades every time too. Like, yeah, of course, there's going to be a fade or two. Like Linehan's going to fade. But you also had, like I said, Wood threw a pick where McCraney was open if you don't underthrow. But if you underthrow, there were 2 dudes in front of him. So like that was a pretty easy pick in the third quarter. But then Wood had absolutely in the third and fourth quarter what felt like 4 or at least 4 drops that were not his fault. But then he also had 3 other pretty easy misfires. So just not his best game, especially in the second half in Dallas. That's, I think, where your frustration is, which is can we respond? Can we A, lean into what's working, and B, if something starts to not work, can we at least like think about adjusting at least a little bit away from it and not leaning further in? Because that was what happened. As the pass game was working worse, it felt like it was pass after pass after pass.
Yeah, I mean, that was where it became maddening, was after so many drives of just throwing the ball, punt, throwing the ball, throwing the ball, punt. Now, yes, there were a couple unfortunate drops in there that would have changed some things, but like you said, Brian, NAU also could go back and say the same thing.
Yeah,
NAU probably would have won that game had their best receiver had a even remotely normal game for him. A couple different times they'd be streaking down the hash marks and get hit in the hands and just drop the ball. Happened twice that I can remember that should have been 30-yard gains or even a touchdown out of it. So
actually, former NAU wide receiver Hendrix Johnson, aka Drix1343, says in the comment section, "Yeah, we have that every game. Drops have been a problem all year for the Jacks."
Yeah, that's again, it would have been a different game if those drops hadn't happened. But I for one, thank NAU for dropping those balls when they did. I was trying to think of a balls dropping joke here, but I got nothing. So we're just going to transition to an ad read because we are a half hour in and we still have a bunch of show to go. So vandalgear.com, guys, you hear us talk about it every single week. None of us seem to be wearing any of our Vandal gear right now, which is actually kind of shocking. Mostly one of us has a Fightin' Taters shirt or hoodie on. Again, there's also the Home Sweet Dome shirts. There's the awesome Idaho script shirts. There's the beautiful Big Sky Conference yellow throwbacks with the white and gray sleeves. That's all brought to you by Pacific Custom Sportswear. They're located here in Spokane, Washington. They've been around for more than 25 years. They work with U of I, printing official U of I gear, but also hosting their own Vandal gear on, again, vandalgear.com. If you don't have a need for Vandal gear and are thinking, hey, I could use some stuff for my business, or maybe I just want to print up some cool gifts for some friends, man, Jeff over there will work with you to make just about anything that you want, printing or embroidery, both. Any of your designs, your company logos, you can slap it on shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, cups, hats, really anything you can think of. Jeff can get it done for you over there. So Pacific Custom Sportswear, if you're looking for some custom stuff, but if you're looking for the best and most affordable Vandal gear around, and vandalgear.com, some of my absolute favorite stuff. Huge shout out to the mayors and Jeff as well for creating the Subdue shirt. You can get it through our patreon.com/Chubs of the Club. It's the only place you can currently get it. All proceeds go to the 1889 Collective. Absolutely love you, vandalgear.com. We thank you. Guys, to circle this back to at least a little bit of our structure of this show before we end up just fucking dropping our pants. Martin, your offensive and defensive players of the game.
I'm gonna take Mr. Obvious for offense here and go Eli Cummings, because that dude was clutch when Idaho needed someone to come up clutch. Are we doing both right off the bat, or do you want me to do just offense? I'll do both because I feel like I'm about to crash.
It was exactly what I was.
I'm gonna go for defense. I'm gonna go Dylan Lane. Like sometimes it felt like he had 2.5 TFL. I guess I'm reading stat reading off the Statcast, like some people like to read off rosters one by one. 12 tackles, like 2.5 TFLs. Like dude was good, and yeah.
Jesus Christ, Martin. All right, so I'm gonna look. The offensively, the only answer is Eli Cummings. Now I want to hit Tom Kendall in the comments section. Yeah, I'm giving Woods some slack. He is by far our best QB to guess wins. Oh yeah, for sure. I just think it's fair to acknowledge. We know he's pretty good. He had a really good first half. He did not have as good a second half. Like that's at the literal level what happened. So Eli Cummings, he was electric, man. He looked. That was the best I think he has looked. I completely buy now when Ford said, heading into PSU that he's now back to 100% because it's weird to say that in, week 9 of the season is when the guy finally gets healthy as he's been playing through the season. But no, he's got bursts. He's taking hits. He's making guys miss. He's doing all the stuff that we kept thinking we were going to see during the spring football in the summer. And then, it was slightly confusing when he was not, but it's because, hey, it turns out, yeah, he's hurt. Hard to do that when you're hurt. So no, Eli Cummings offensively, to me, there's no nominee who's second place, like absolutely none at all. On the defensive side, that one to me is a little bit tougher because hey, Martin, what you said about Dylan Lane, yeah, big deal. Plus, he had 2.5 TFLs. He had some big tackles as well. Matthias McLean had some huge plays. I mean, 4 total tackles, but I feel like his impact on the game was radically outpaces what his overall numbers were. And that last big play in overtime, Donovan Parham when Ty Pennington went down, he was turning away from Donovan Parham, who was about to get him, and slammed right into Zach Krotzer, which actually kind of was like, if you saw Idaho's social media team having Zach Krotzer being the star of like a mini horror film, that was the actual encapsulation, or that was the actual version of that mini horror film. But I'll go Matthias McLean in part because, one, his play was, I thought his impact was much greater than what you see in the stat sheet, but two, kind of emblematic of Idaho's pass rush delivered for a lot of the game in a way that we haven't seen the entire year. And to pick up this win, Idaho needed every goddamn bit of production they got from every single room. And I mean, we've on this show talked a lot about Idaho not getting to the quarterback, which has been true for most of the season. Not true today.
Yeah, I mean, again, Eli Cummings is the brain dead answer on offense. 17 touches, 184 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The guy was electric. And anytime there was a big play that needed to happen, yeah, Nolan McWilliams had one. But realistically, outside of that, man, it was Eli Cummings. When you needed something to happen, he got it done. No, again, McWilliams actually had a couple of different big plays there, but I would also go with the offensive line. Yes, Wood was getting pressured a lot, under 50% on his passes. It seemed to be pulling out of the pocket immediately. I do think that has a tendency to happen when the other coaches can see on the other side of the field, hey, Idaho stopped running the ball. Let's go get the quarterback. I know our defense does not believe in pressuring a quarterback very frequently. Other teams don't seem to have that problem. They seem to think, hey, getting pressure on the quarterback is a good thing. Would love to see that happen a little bit more out of our team. Again, not counting tonight. Best they've pressured a quarterback other than, again, Portland State doesn't count. That was essentially an NAIA school. But I would give a shout out to the offensive line. Idaho killed it, man. Over 200 yards rushing, averaged 5.9 yards a carry. In the run game, the offensive line was getting the push on almost every single play. Yes, pass blocking, a little bit different story, but also play calling did not help those guys out at all. Defensively, Brian, you called out Matthias McLean. I thought, again, the stat sheet shows he had 4 tackles, 1 sack, or half a sack, and 1 tackle for loss. He was everywhere tonight. Anytime that it seemed like there was pressure on Pennington, McLean was usually the guy closest to him. But I also do want to give a special shout out to, and I'm sorry, Frederick, if you listen to this, I have not looked up how to pronounce your last name. I don't know if it's Lujan or Luhan or
Luhan.
Luhan, thank you. I know a Lujan who in real life, so I never know. But Frederick Lujan forced the fumble, and then Cruz Hepburn, the Vandal / whatever LCSC is now / Vandal again, with the 63 yard fumble return. Man, that was incredible. That was a huge boon to this game because, again, as we saw, Idaho's offense did not do a whole lot in the third and fourth quarter. So having a defensive touchdown come midway through the third quarter was a massive inflection point on how Idaho ended up coming back and winning this football game at the end. Brian, any other players that you had thought about or wanted to give any shots out before we get to what I know everybody here is drinking right now, because I've seen it in the comment section? But any final players before we get to our final Edward?
No, I think we need to talk about Snake River Stampede Canadian whiskey. Look, one of the best. Snake River makes the 2 best Canadian whiskeys you're going to get in the state of Idaho. Yeah, the entry-level Stampede, or you want to celebrate a big W like tonight, you can reach up a little bit higher. Grab that small batch 1915. Both have double barrel finishes. Your Stampede in ex-bourbon, then Oloroso sherry casks. Your 1915 has ex-bourbon, then finishes in ex-Canadian rye whiskey casks, but it's also aged a couple extra years. You can't go wrong with either option. I 100% mean this when I say they're the 2 best Canadian whiskeys in the state of Idaho, because we came in contact with Snake River because I'm a Snake River lunatic before that. So get yourself to an Idaho State liquor store, grab yourself a Snake River today.
Man, hitting the comment section, Ross Warren saying, I know the special teams in some respects was a disaster, but without Pope flipping the field and Owen Adams hitting that field goal, we are having a fire everyone reaction show. Ross, that could not be more accurate. And yes, both of those guys deserve a special shout out, because Cameron Pope, man, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. After failing out very hard as the Vandal kicker, has returned as, LJ Harm has gotten a punt here and there, but has returned as probably the best punter on the team. So really cool to see him get a bit of a redemption arc here, where he has come back and made contributions to this team. And again, I can't speak highly enough about Owen Adams hitting the biggest field goal of his life twice after getting iced that first go around. Nick Weber, it is a 1915 night. SRS is delicious at Line of Fire 95. Ross Warren again, 1915 day without a doubt. Tom Kendall 92. The chilled 1915 is wonderful, especially good with a no doubt win on ESPN2. Rob Maurer, the Homedale Hammer, 2 big runs, 4 miles down the road from me. Man, Hayden Kinchlow, I know we did not get too much into his stats because, again, when you get to the stats for Hayden Kinchlow, he had 2 carries for 4 yards. Not necessarily blowing the doors off, but that's because he comes in as that short yardage fullback that, hey, it's 4th down, we need 2 yards, Kinch is going to get it. It's 1st and goal, we need 2 yards to win the fucking game, give it to Kinch and he's going to get it done. Absolutely love that. Ross Warren again in the comment section, damn Rob, you are dead on. Kinch is so reliable, we overlook it, and that is something that I need to do a better job of pointing out. Yes, I know Kinch isn't the guy who's going to get 20 carries for 100 yards, but man, when you need the tough yards to win the game or convert the big down, he's the guy that gets it done almost every single time, Brian.
Oh, dude, absolutely. I mean, he's a guy who hope he's here for a little bit longer, so we get to call his name a little bit more. But no, Idaho's has a few pretty solid short yardage options, but it's clear that when Ford really wants a yard, Kinch is where he's going.
Brian, There's so many things we could talk about from this game. I feel like we've litigated a lot of it. I can't believe I'm going to do this. I'm going to take my hands completely off the wheel. And I'm just going to say, Brian, what do you want to talk about? And I'm just going to let you go. And we're going to see what happens.
Man. Okay, this is one of the games where your expectations of who Idaho are matter a shit ton. If your view is, hey, right now, this team as constructed, whether, new coaching staff that I think as a whole is clearly getting better. Not everything's resolved, of course. And you've got players mostly, adapting to roles, as the season goes on. If you view Idaho coming into this game as like, hey, they're a 500-ish solid, solid-ish Big Sky team, then NAU is a great barometer because NAU still believes they can make the playoffs. If there's a fourth Big Sky playoff team on paper, you would gamble it's going to be either NAU or Sac State, probably gamble NAU right now. And Idaho just went into the walk-up Sky Dome in front of 15 people and picked up a huge W, man. I feel like I have put a lot of time in on this show, letting people know I am not a just look on the bright side person. And I think I care about like understanding the entire picture. I view Idaho as what I just said, a 500-ish team. So being up and down is what I expect. I more care this year about, are we seeing trajectory? Are we seeing a reason to believe that it was just a rough first half of the season and we just overestimated, but not radically overestimated? And what I'm seeing is I do feel like this team is coming together. I do feel like the coaching staff, for all the things that we also clearly covered here tonight, I do think big picture, the trend is moving in the right direction, aka right track. I would still say like we're kind of in the baby step process right now of certain things are getting like we're getting better, small things that meant, and you're dying in the background. So I have absolutely no idea.
It's on the screen, Brian.
Okay. Oh yeah, dude, that lumberjack is definitely metrosexual. Like that design NAU has for the lumberjack, like who the hell came up with that? And like, hey, this is not a put down. This is not meant as a slur. But it's like, was the most flamboyant member of the GSA the one who was in charge of putting that together? Like that was a very interesting look. NAU's going with the lumberjack, who was offed tonight. But no, like, hey, I guess, hey, Dallas, here's the question I have for you is let's talk offensively for a minute. Cause I think that's the area where you feel you more definitively understand Idaho. Whereas defensively, I feel like sometimes it's up and down. Sometimes it's like, well, are there truly the right guys to have any sort of reasonable adjudication yet? What I saw in the first half was exactly what I thought I'd seen against Portland State, where when Thomas Ford had said he was going to be more involved in the offense, things stabilized in a good way. And then in the second half, I felt like it reminded me of earlier in the season where there isn't really a ton of rhythm to what's going on offensively. And it sometimes feels like the play was called 5 minutes beforehand, regardless of the situation and regardless of the outcome of like previous plays beforehand. And that Idaho just had like I'm not trying to be like the moron fan who's like, oh, hey, why don't you just run it every fucking time? Like, it's not like that simple, obviously, but it did seem like NAU today had some pretty obvious ways that Idaho was able to take advantage of them. And Idaho didn't lean into their strengths enough in the second half, and it almost cost them the game.
And that's my biggest fear with this team, Brian, is how many times are we going to talk about this, even in a victory of, man, there's just not been 60 consistent minutes from this team. It doesn't matter which side of the ball is playing well. The other side is typically going to fuck something up at some point. We know the defense at this point. The secondary is a weak point. The deep ball is, again, Pennington was able to hit a couple of them. Again, the drops were certainly a problem. They got to him pressure wise, which absolutely helped. But we've seen it throughout the course of this year that teams pick apart the Idaho defense through the air. Like, we know that at this point. We know where the strengths and weaknesses of that lie. Now, schematically, man, Dennison still feels like he's throwing the kitchen sink at everything, which I think confuses Idaho's players from time to time. But also, man, looking sometimes at Ty Pennington on third down, I was like, how do you even figure out what the hell you're going to do against this defense? Because there are now 2 linemen with their hands in the ground. There are 2 linemen standing up on the edge, which is great. I mean, it's a third down. You're rushing the passer. That's fine. But then there's also a linebacker that keeps shifting on both sides of that to make it look like maybe there's going to be 5 or maybe even 6 or maybe it's 3. Who knows? And that does seem to really work. Offensively, man, Brian, it gets to a point that we're all making jokes about the fucking fade route. And it is driving me insane. Yes, you can't just run the ball every single play, but that doesn't mean that you can't sprinkle play action in there. We have not seen a whole lot of that this year, and it did work. Gabe Hoffman with a 19-yard catch that was very big to get Idaho moving down the field towards the end of that final quarter there. But it just, yeah, like you said, it feels like the play was called 5 minutes before. And there's just times where you wonder what the hell is going on. I know Jesiaro caught the touchdown on the busted coverage at the start of the game. But why do a read option with Joshua Wood and Rocco Koch in the backfield? That makes absolutely no sense to me. It kills your +1 advantage, and now you're essentially using Wood and then Koch as a running back. Who, I mean, he took the snap, so Wood was realistically the running back there. But what is the fucking point here? You're taking away from the strength of, you put that guy in at quarterback, and it's a true +1 in your run game. Look, I like getting cute. I like getting weird. The reverse to McWilliams worked really well. The double pass over to Eli Cummings that got a first down worked really well. But then there's some things that are just like, why are you running a read option with 2 quarterbacks from the 3-yard line? Just, you have Hayden Kinchlow, give him the ball twice. He's going to get 4 yards and he's going to get into the end zone. Like, there's so many things that just don't seem to click. And I understand, look, Matt Linehan is in his first year as the coordinator, first year calling plays at any level of football. But man, this is a joke that everybody in our Discord is saying. You see it online too. KJ West 33 says Linehan's worst nightmare, 2nd and 10. And it does feel like if this team does not get 3+ yards on first down, man, you might as well punt, because it's just going to be a complete crapshoot with at least 1 fade thrown in there. And it's baffling to me, Brian. And yes, like you said, this is a team that's going to be around 500. There's going to be moments of highs. There's going to be moments of lows. But man, as a coaching staff, you got to put your guys in positions to succeed. And I don't see that consistently enough on the offensive side of the football.
Now, the pushback I'm going to give is, and maybe it's not 100% pushback. It's that, like, hey, like anytime you have a tight win, and we've acknowledged this like 1,000 times. Jesus Christ, I bet. I think I saw the comment you're laughing at, Dallas. Jesus Christ.
There's 2 comments I'm laughing at very quickly. Yeah. Line of Fire 95, don't punt. We risk the punt reception. And Rob Maurer, I bet in practice Wood hits the fade routes most every time. And I'm going to guess practicing against the Idaho secondary, he probably does hit them most of the time.
Okay. But I'm going to shift. I'm going to have a slightly different tonal shift, because like, hey, we have tried pretty hard on this show to thoroughly, talk about whatever the subject is. You're talking about an up and down team. There's a glass half empty part. There's a glass half full. I think you just made a very coherent case for the glass half empty case a moment ago. The glass half full case, which to me, again, I walked in this game expecting the team's about 500. So I am more landing on the glass half full end right now. Is, cannot overstate this enough. They picked up a win they absolutely would not have picked up in September. Like, good teams win ugly games. That happens. And by the way, NAU, who was okay, they don't suck. Like, NAU just beat the shit out of Idaho State a week ago, who you and I, after the Eastern game, were horrified about Idaho playing Idaho State. Are you still horrified about Idaho State at the same level? I'm not. I'm not saying it's going to be blood or anything, but I feel way better about that Idaho State game later after what I've seen these past 2 weeks, counting this week, counting the warts we sometimes saw this week, because still Idaho picked up a win. They scored 35, something I've said this entire season. This Idaho team needs to try to score around 35 if they're going to win games, because they're not defensively. They're just not going to be a team that can hold a lot of teams to below 21 points. So they got to put up points. But secondarily, we did talk about the NAU version of how NAU could have had things be different. But we can acknowledge the Idaho version too. Most of the passes Joshua Wood missed tonight were not passes he usually misses. I'm not talking about the couple fades, but like, hey, Wood missed a couple passes where he's rolling to his right, extending the play. He almost never misses those. Like, he missed it today. Like, he just had an off second half. That happens. That pass to McCraney that was a pick, that was the right read. Just don't underthrow it.
You got to get that to the back of the end zone in front of the receiver rather than the front of the end zone behind the receiver.
By the way, the type of pass we saw him make in the Kibbe Dome last week to Marquand McCraney as well. So, if Wood has a couple of those passes different, or now to be fair to Joshua Wood, you got 4 or 5 passes in the second half, bouncing off shoulders, bouncing off hands. Well, what in God's name are you supposed to do? And those passes that were bouncing off hands, look, this wasn't like a certain backup quarterback we've talked about throwing rockets at the edge of extension. No, like, those misses most of those were definitely, man, receivers should have brought those in. And you have a couple of those completions. We're not bitching nearly as much, because a couple of those would have been game-altering plays that would have pushed us towards a 2-score win against an NAU team who made the playoffs last year, against an NAU team who is ranked and heading into this game was in the driver's seat to make the playoffs, not skipping the first round, but NAU is in the driver's seat to make the playoffs heading into this game. Idaho picking up a win against a team like that, that's not nothing. And to me, it's more like a point of evidence that in spite of things not working, when this team isn't getting in its way, in a way that's needless, like there's some holes that only recruitment will fix. But when Idaho's not getting in its way in a way that doesn't have to happen, this is still a number 4, number 5-ish Big Sky team.
Brian, I think the final points I want to hit around that is, yes, I'm certainly hitting the glass half full point tonight. And I think that's just because on the glass half full side, man, remember how the penalty issue was a thing the first couple of weeks? That has essentially gone away. Idaho has played really disciplined football for the most part for the last 7 weeks. And that's been really nice to see. We've seen, again, Joshua Wood had 33 yards passing in the first game. And no, he's not a guy that's going to go out here and throw 350 yards and 4 touchdowns every game. If he was, he would not be in the FCS. He wouldn't be in the G5. He'd be in the P4 somewhere. But then you come back to, again, where I struggle with the coaching staff and with some of the things that are not changing there. We've seen the players adapt and change and grow throughout the season. Again, our kicking game has significantly improved. Again, improving to a 6 out of 10 from being a 2 out of 10 is what I would consider significant improvement, even if it has a lot of room to grow. That's just where I fall on this is man, yes, Idaho has just stacked up back-to-back wins, first time this season, won a ranked game on the road at night in a weird environment. Nick Weber is saying winning a game where we obviously didn't play our best ball wire to wire is a good hurdle to clear. Like, there are some very positive things here, but I'm waiting for that coaching staff to take that next step. And I know there's limitations. We've talked about it, and Coach Ford has talked about it. Like, man, if the DBs aren't covering the routes, doesn't matter what the hell you're calling. Doesn't matter if it's cover 0, cover 4, 2, 1, 3, 6, 9. Does not matter. You're going to blow shit. But I am just nervous that Idaho's in that weird position, man. If I don't think anybody, at least affiliated with the show, is going to say Idaho's got a chance to win the next 3 games and make it interesting for the playoff committee. But if the coaching staff takes even a slight step forward in some of these mistakes that we keep seeing game in and game out, week in and week out, man, like it's not that hard to think, okay, this team could be a playoff team. They're 7-5, and 2 of their losses were with backup quarterbacks. Like that looks pretty damn good on a resume. Yeah, I mean you're still talking about first in or last out, but you got to see the coaching staff take a step, and I just haven't seen that yet. I'm hoping we're going to feel a whole lot better about this in a couple days. But for me, man, there's still some head scratching moments that make it hard to fully believe that this team has turned the corner.
See, I guess that I just anticipate we're with a 500 team. You're just gonna have some of those head scratching moments. It's the DNA of the team. And, like one of my takeaways from this game is Thomas Ford gets a marquee FCS win. There's a shit ton of the entire FCS nation that would love a win against NAU. So I know because we're in the Big Sky, like we feel different about that. And if you're at the top of the Missouri Valley, you feel different about that. That means there's like 7 to 8 teams in the entire nation who would kind of like shake their head like, oh, sweet, you beat NAU, whatever. No, like this was a big win for Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that these last 2 weeks have completely changed my outlook on not necessarily UC Davis, but I mean, you remember how bad it felt after Eastern, where it legitimately felt like, is there a fourth win on the schedule? Or, I mean, Dallas, like, before Wood, we knew for a fact Wood was playing against Portland State. Like, literally after you score 14 against Eastern, there's concern, like, is there a win left on the schedule? Well, look, I really feel that in spite of things not all being perfect, I do think the coaching staff and players have responded to scoring 14 against Eastern in an overwhelmingly positive way that makes me feel way better about the matchup with Sac State, way better about the matchup with Idaho State. And look, if this team finishes 5-7 or something like that, considering the low point that we felt in this middle part of the year, like that doesn't sound like a catastrophe to me at all. Because, you and I have been transparent about this. Until Idaho is sitting at 6 wins heading into the Idaho State game, there's no reason to be worrying about playoffs. What I'm worried about is, does it feel like coaching stuff's moving in the right direction? Do we feel like players are getting better and coming together in a way that you really want them to? Because a 4-game losing streak plus your bye, that's 5 goddamn weeks of bad football and bad news where that's all you're hearing from guys like us or from fucking anyone. It's a big deal to be able to rebound and pick up wins. And like Nick Weber said in the comment section a second ago, if I can find that, clearing the hurdle of being able to pick up an ugly win. Again, I've said this 1,000 times. Good teams win ugly. Honestly, good teams will lose a game they shouldn't and then rebound and learn off of that. So that's the glass half full end that I'm landing on here is, in spite of doing all the stuff that makes us just scream in the Discord, this team still came together enough. The coaching staff still got together enough to pick up a marquee FCS win. And suddenly we're finishing the season with a handful of wins instead of what we thought it might be. That's a big deal. Stopping the bleeding to be able to make sure we still get fans in the dome for those last 2 games. That's a big deal. For the players themselves, for us as fans to have a good experience, but to continue to sell the program for the next batch of guys, like there are good things happening. There are, there are steps being taken in the right direction. Are they as far as we always wish they were? No, but like we don't get to invent people's improvement track. Like it is what it is. And I think it's pretty clear, not perfect yet. You and I were on the same page that some of the play calling offensively is where we feel most apprehensive. And for me, that's been constant the entire year. But in totality, I think there's no way to look at Idaho post Eastern and say anything but, no, dude, like this is a much better team.
Yeah. I think Brian, you and I are saying very similar things, just again with our natural, 2 to 5% difference on it. Crewhead 76 is basically saying exactly where my head is at. I hope we carry this momentum into next week, and our offensive coordinator wakes the fuck up. That is what I'm looking for. Because I do agree, Brian. I mean, again, I just mentioned a lot of it. There's a lot of things that are growing. There's a lot of things to build on. And again, even if Idaho does end the season at 5-7, assuming they get one win out of these next 3 games, there is, it does not meet the sky high / unrealistic expectations we all had at the beginning of the year. But to have Thomas Ford come in with essentially an entirely new coaching staff with what, 1 holdover, 2 if you count JD Johnson as the football general manager, outside of like those sky high expectations, the players are getting better. We are seeing, for the most part, improvement. Now, improvement is not always a straight line, but we've been talking about it in the comments section. We've talked about it here a little bit. The secondary played better than they really have most of the season. And Portland State was one thing, but we're seeing guys making steps forward. We're going to see a full class of Thomas Ford recruits in 2026, and hopefully that brings some guys like what Anthony Woods did his freshman year, come in and immediately be the best guy in that position group. Hopefully we see a couple impact freshmen like that next year. There are certainly things here that are building for what a very good future for Vandal football can be. This season, I hesitate to assume that this is all going to click here. I hope it does. We'll see what happens. Brian, we are over an hour. Any final thoughts before we adjourn on tonight's actually instant reaction?
I mean, honestly, this was like the perfect Halloween game. If you're a person who loves Halloween, which I do, no, dude, this was absolutely perfect to be up, down, up, down. Like I was watching the game with my wife, who is also not a huge football fan, and she doesn't do SRS, she does Reds. Where she was telling me like, Brian, I'm sorry. Well, and then I was telling her like, Claire, can you count to 3? Like they're not down by 30. It's a 3-point game. They have the ball. Like if they kick a field goal, it's a tie game. But just incredible. The way this game went up and down, I guess I know there's a different Halloween game some people remember. This is the one that I'm going to remember the most for a long time. And just going to say I'm stoked to be back, to come back next week and talk UC Davis, which will obviously be a different talk. But today was a good day to be a Vandal. It was also a good day to shit your pants a few times, but they picked up the W, man. And in the end, what we care about are W's. Ford has a 2-game winning streak for the 2nd consecutive time, man. So V's up.
Yeah, guys, again, patreon.com/Tubs of the Club. If you're interested, nights like tonight where it's a Friday night in Flagstaff, Arizona. Not a whole lot of Vandals showing up. Not a whole lot of Astro Jack showed up either. But Tom Kendall in the comment section saying, I just wish the Tubs Discord chat crew were more critical. Too much of a love fest in there.
Okay. Sorry, you go first. There's one thing I've got to bring up.
As Tom says, no, I love all my miserable family in Discord. Man, it was 4 hours of all of us essentially just drinking the Kool-Aid and waiting for it to, drinking the Flavor-Aid and waiting for it to hit. Kool-Aid made it very clear it was Flavor-Aid in the Jonestown thing, not Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
So we're all drinking the Flavor-Aid and we are all just miserable, sad sacks of shit. And then we come out the other side, Idaho, with absolutely the biggest win of the season. Probably the most important game to have won all season because it was the ranked game on the road. So many things that the Vandals just had not done yet. Proved a ton of it tonight. Again, patreon.com/Tubs of the Club if you want to hang out in a game thread where you're feeling like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Line of Fire 95. I'm guilty of the total negativity in the Discord. Hey, I do the same thing. Brian every once in a while does. Martin does not because he's Captain Positivity.
No, it's okay. It's not negativity. It's that everyone's a drama queen because the point of a game thread is to react instantly. So you are only highest of high, lowest of low. There's absolutely no in between. That's the point of it. But like everyone understands your instant reaction is not necessarily correct. It's just a correct representation of what was going on. The thing I did want to bring up is NAU. Come on, guys. Like, legitimately, it looked like there was less than 1,000 people at that game. And I bring that up because you and I have talked about being terrified about, Idaho attendance, after, while Idaho had that streak going on. And Idaho did not bottom out nearly as bad as we were concerned it could be.
Attendance listed as 5,112 tonight.
Not a chance. Not a chance. Unless like having candy counts as like an extra person in the seat. Jesus Christ. Because the Sky Dome only holds like 10-ish thousand. There's no way that was a 50% capacity. But whatever, like ignore their number. I'm just bringing that up. And I don't mean this to shit on NAU because like I actually don't enjoy shitting on teams when fans don't show up. It sucks to not have fans show up. And NAU is a solid team that made the playoffs last year. They're in the driver's seat to make playoffs this year. But it's worth, sometimes having a reality check attendance wise that obviously Idaho's not going to be Montana State, but even when it feels not fantastic, Idaho is still towards the top of the Big Sky for attendance and support. So maybe some of the anxiety we have about bottoming out, so long as it doesn't get to, the losses don't pile up for too long, is not quite as bad as we actually think. And fingers crossed that with family weekend coming this week against UC Davis, we're going to see, and coming off back-to-back wins plus a big, ESPN2 win. Fingers crossed that's going to translate into one of the better showings.
As Nick Weber says in the comment section, careful throwing rocks on attendance for a Friday Halloween game. The Kibbe Dome would have been Cowan Spectrum levels tonight. You're not wrong, Nick. You're not wrong. I also don't know how much better we would have done on a Saturday compared to a Friday night. But again, now the Vandals are on a winning streak. So hopefully we see a much better crowd for family weekend, 4 p.m. Saturday. Brian, we will be back with Tubbs at the Club Thursday night, or at least I assume it's Thursday night. We'll find out. Something might happen and we might be all over the place. But Thursday night, 6:45 Pacific, we will be live to preview the UC Davis game. The Aggies are rolling into town. I don't even know what they're going to be ranked because they play tomorrow. And Vandals get a nice 2-day weekend to enjoy being, for now, on the right side of what had been a really bad losing streak. Now we're on a 2-game winning streak, baby. Sky's the limit. V's up. And go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
All right. Now I just have to remember how to end this now that Martin is gone. We are well past Tubbs After Dark, guys. This is almost Tubbs early morning. Where the fuck is it? There we go.